Testimony began Tuesday in the case of State versus Nichole Rice. But before we could hear testimony, the courts had to settle an issue with regards to the defense filing a motion to throw out the case entirely.
This is an absolute abortion of justice, Your Honor.
Nichole Rice's defense attorney, Rick Sand, didn't hold back in his argument for dismissal, citing the bombshell investigative report into a former Minot police officer and its mention of the state's case agent, Carmen Asham.
That blows up the credibility of their case agent and lead investigator. There is so much work and so much investigation this creates on our behalf that I believe this rises to the level of dismissal.
Prosecutor Tiffany Sorgan noting Asham was not the focus of the report.
Please note, this is a report regarding Lieutenant McLeod. Sergeant Asham is mentioned in it tangentially.
Judge Richard Hager refusing to toss out the case, but ordering that Asham be made available for a possible deposition by the defense.
Again, I don't believe that it is directly causal to this particular case, and I didn't find any connections in the report that would bring it to that level.
As the case moved to trial, the attorneys presented their opening arguments.
State intends to show you evidence that on the early morning hours of June 3rd, 2007, Nichole Thomas Rice stabbed Anita Knutson twice in the chest, killing her.
Siblings, roommates, they fight. There's issues about an unplugged fish tank, about an alarm clock that wouldn't stop going off. The evidence is going to show you people like Nichole don't kill their roommates over that kind of stuff. They don't put knives through their sternums.
First to take the stand, Anita's adoptive parents, Sharon and Gordon Knutson, who testified to the events surrounding Anita's death and the impact it had on their families.
I checked her, put my hand on her leg, and she was cold.
How did Anita's death affect your family?
Really much, a lot. It's like I can't describe how we felt. It was so bad.
Testimony will continue Wednesday afternoon. Some of the most profound testimony that came from this first week of the Nichole Rice murder trial involved law enforcement's conversations with Nichole and her reaction to finding out of the death of her roommate, as well as former acquaintances of Nichole's who claimed that in the past she admitted to the crime. We heard from law enforcement officers who said that they were surprised at Nichole's response to learning that Anita had died.
No real reaction at all.
Meanwhile, two former acquaintances of Nichole's, an Army veteran, as well as a party guest who offered to give her a ride home, both testifying that they heard her admit to the crime.
From Nichole Rice, it was that she did it, that she had killed Anita.
That she had done it to her roommate.
A key point for the defense in this first week of the trial has been questioning law enforcement and those involved in the investigation into Anita's death as to why they didn't further pursue leads into a man named Devin Hall. That's somebody that the defense has floated as a possible alternate suspect in this crime, although Hall has never been charged in this case.
You arrested Nichole in 2022.
Correct.
Without talking to Devin Hall or the FBI.
Correct.
So what we know is that testimony is going to resume Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. in that courtroom right behind me, courtroom 303 here in Grand Forks. Monday morning's testimony in the Nichole Rice murder trial saw yet another twist. Members of Rice's own family, her aunt and uncle Brenda and Mark Glynns, testifying for the state. Brenda Glynns testifying her niece revealed details of the crime scene she would have not been privy to during a road trip from New Mexico back to North Dakota.
Did Nichole ever say anything to you specifically about Anita deserving to die?
Yes,
What did she say?
she deserved to die.
Glynn saying why she testified despite the case tearing their family apart.
This whole thing
Yeah.
has not only destroyed Knutson's, Nichole's life, my entire family, and the community. And this needs justice.
Okay.
It's time for the truth to be told.
Case agent Detective Carmen Asham testified to how investigators said Rice kept changing her story with different facts in interviews with detectives Robert Barnard and David Goodman in the days following Knutsen's death, then Special Agent Meixner, and later Asham. She told the jury how, when the team with the TV show Cold Justice got involved, they worked with them to figure out who to re-interview.
We gave them our input. There was a couple of people that we crossed off the list because we didn't think they were relevant. I know there was at least one person they had on the list that we knew to be deceased and we're not going to be able to re-interview.
So you had some input into the re-interviewing, is that correct?
Yes.
Was Cold Justice calling the shots?
No.
In cross, the defense questioning Asham's credibility after she was named in an outside investigative report into the conduct of former Minot police officer Matthew McLeod. Asham was not the focus of that report, and McLeod was never charged. As the state rested, the case turned to the defense, who called private investigator Doug Coons to the stand. Coons, a former FBI agent investigating the case since 2023, and was critical of the state's position that Rice was their suspect.
We went from the house in Velva to the family function, and then, okay, in this first version, we left out the bar. But why is that significant? She still isn't back in Minot where she would have had access to Anita.
Coons also revealing the defense paid him a flat rate of $10,000 for his contributions to the case. His testimony will resume Tuesday morning. I'll bring our viewers into the moment that, if you were watching the stream, the moment that the verdict was read, there were a lot of emotions pouring into that. The members of the Rice family were very emotional when they were walking into the courtroom. A lot of them were fighting back tears, not knowing what the fate of Nichole would be. And of course, the Knutsen family was emotional as well. I would say maybe a little more stoic than the Rice family, given the circumstances. But when the verdict was read, there was a huge uproar of cheer on the Rice side of the courtroom, including from her lead attorney, Rick Sand, and his brother, and De'Ara Daigle, their team. They jumped up and slapped hands and gave one another a big hug. And everyone on the Rice side of the courtroom was cheering and thanking God. It really showed just how divisive this case was. I mean, if you go on social media, I've been talking with some of the other news covering this case. If you go on social media, you see the comments on all sides of the spectrum on, well, I think she was guilty. I think she was innocent. I don't think the jury's going to be able to come back with a verdict. It was really all over the spectrum, and it was quite a sort of a social experiment, if nothing else, for this state, this case.
Find the defendant, Nichole Aaron Rice, not guilty. In the information dated at Grand Forks, North Dakota, this 26th day of March, 2025.
That was the reaction heard in a Grand Forks courtroom this morning as Nichole Rice was named not guilty in the 2007 killing of her roommate, Anita Knutsen, in Minot. With the latest on today's verdict, we bring in our reporter, Joe Skrzyszewski, who's been covering this case from the beginning. Good afternoon, Joe.
Yeah, good afternoon, Krista. It took the jury of 9 men and 3 women all of about 6 to 7 hours of deliberation to return their verdict of not guilty against Nichole Rice in the 2007 killing of her then roommate, Anita Knutsen, in their Northwest Minot apartment. As you heard there, that very emotional outburst that came from the Rice side of the courtroom. The Knutsen side of the courtroom was a little more reserved, but nonetheless, they were obviously disappointed to the verdict. The Rice side of the courtroom was very happy and elated with the verdict. We saw in that hot open, we saw Nichole Rice collapse onto the table in tears, presumably tears of relief. It took the Grand Forks County jury of 9 men and 3 women just over 6 hours to return a not guilty verdict against Nichole Rice in the 2007 death of her roommate, Anita Knutsen, in Minot.
Nichole Aaron Rice, not guilty.
The defense crying out in jubilation as the clerk of court read not guilty, with Rice collapsing in her chair, overwhelmed by emotion. It's the conclusion of a 3-year-long case against Rice that took several twists and turns. At trial, the prosecution saying Rice had means, motive, and opportunity, pointing to her alleged confessions to 2 people and inconsistent statements to law enforcement.
And he told you during his testimony that he caught the defendant in a lie. during that interview about where she was at or around the time of the murder.
But in the end, the jury sided with Rick Sand and his defense team, who characterized the case against his client as a media circus due to the national attention it received.
And it's a media circus because they can put her in that chair, and these people helped them do it. And it's garbage. And they should be ashamed of themselves, all three of them.
Family and friends of Knutson's reacting to the verdict. Anita's sister, Anna, speaking on her own behalf, was critical of the defense team's celebration of the verdict, adding, "I spent the last week reliving some of the hardest parts of the last 18 years of my life. And in those 18 years, one thing I've learned is that a not guilty verdict does not mean innocence. I cannot say the same for many of the people in that room, but my conscience is clear." Anita's childhood friend, Tyler Schmaltz, an outspoken advocate for her case over the years, saying in part, "God truly knows what happened that night, and we all will have to stand before him one day and be judged, and I am happy knowing when that day comes, I get to meet Anita again." Nichole Rice walked out of the courthouse Wednesday, now a free citizen, and took part in a brief prayer circle with her family and her law team before going her way. As for the Knutson family, they're still left searching for answers as to the loss of their loved one, Anita. Anita Knutson, by the way, would have turned 37 years old this September. At the Grand Forks County Courthouse, I'm Joe Skrzyszewski reporting for your news leader. This past week's murder trial in Grand Forks captured the attention of people all across the country. It was also a learning opportunity for some up-and-coming criminal justice students. I spoke with a student and instructor at the University of North Dakota on how they're incorporating the trial into their lessons. For some inside courtroom 303 in Grand Forks the past couple of weeks, the trial of State versus Nichole Rice was life-altering. For some in the gallery, it's been a first-hand experience learning about the justice system. That includes Lauren Lilquist, a sophomore at UND studying criminal justice.
I hope to learn more of what goes on in the courtroom because then you get a more first-hand experience rather than watching over like a Zoom or like a YouTube video.
Lilquist and her classmates rotated, sitting in on the proceedings, taking notes and sharing them with each other. A few of the students were even present during the emotional reading of the verdict on Wednesday.
Rice not guilty.
Their instructor, Megan Mitchell, says they've discussed how they would handle the case if they were jurors.
And how some people may say, you know, you guys, I maybe wouldn't have remembered that exactly either, right? That there is variation in how people are able to recall things.
Mitchell says not all of her students want to be lawyers. Some are pursuing careers in law enforcement.
Being able to see police officers on the stand and talking about how they collected evidence and different types of procedures that were necessary.
Lilquist says the nature of this case stood out.
The fact it's been a cold case for quite a while, I find that more intriguing.
Mitchell says it's a case her students can relate to.
For college-age students in particular, this case strikes a different chord with them because they are living this right now. They are in the exact time that Anita was, in college, going to school.
Mitchell says she may use elements of this trial in future class offerings.